Well, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Hope everyone's having a lovely day and that you had a lovely evening as well. We're going to start off today with a follow-up to my John Bolton story from yesterday. I think we might have figured something out while I was on the Patriot Power Hour with 412 Anon, Drunk Pinata, and Tennessee Homesteader. Big ups to those guys. Check out that episode if you have not yet. Also want to remind everybody I am going to South Carolina tomorrow, where Thomas and I are going to be hanging out this weekend, and we're going to be doing a series of live streams on both of our channels, so please do tune in. There's going to be a lot of interesting things. I can tell you on my channel, Nick No and Sergeant William Cotel are going to be joining us on Friday night to talk about what happened back in 2012 in Libya. You sure you know what I mean when I say that? And then on Saturday night, Thomas and I are going to be doing a live dig on the subject of remote viewing. And an actual remote viewer named Ken, a big viewer of the program, is going to be joining us. Now today, we've got some great news in the General Michael Flynn case. We're going to talk about that. Also, we've got some great news coming out of Ukraine with the Bidens. We're going to talk about that. Also, we've got some interesting video from Lindsey Graham. We've also got a hot mic situation with some reporters talking about why Adam Schiff is such unrepentant liar. And then finally, Carter Page is suing not only the DNC, but also that Fusion GPS law firm Pkwy, and it's all about the bogus Steele dossier. And finally, we're going to take a look at Justin Bieber's new advertising campaign for his new single, Yummy. It is not what you think, or maybe knowing these people and how sick they are, it might be exactly what you think. So you're not going to want to miss it, guys. Do not go anywhere. Please do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor. A famous movie villain once said, "Introduce a little anarchy, upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos." Well, rarely in history have truer words been spoken, and history has demonstrated this repeatedly. Whether it's a stock market crash, a tea attack, the power goes off longer than you've expected. All of these things happen without warning, and when it's breaking news, it's too late to prepare, and you're in a panicked scramble. Now, to avoid the chaos, there's a few things you should do. One in particular, but build an emergency food supply. I personally trust and use my Patriot Supply to do this for me and my family. Now, you can get started with a 2-week kit at their website, and this week you can save 40% off these food kits when you go to my special website, preparewithredpill78.com. These kits include breakfasts, lunches, and dinners that last up to 25 years in storage, and they arrive to your door with guaranteed 2-day delivery. Those who know what's coming are preparing today, and you should too. So go to preparewithredpill78.com and save 40% off right now. Once again, that's preparewithredpill78.com. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today, like I said, I was on the Patriot Power Hour yesterday with 412 Tennessee and Drunk Pinata, and Tennessee had dropped this stuff in my Discord server. He says some interesting data points for your consideration regarding John Bolton. Now, there are some very strong feelings about this man, but what I'm about to outline are historical facts in correlation to our favorite Anon and 17-plus comments. Number one, everything broke wide open with the New York Times article about the Bolton book transcript. Now, 1A, the article is written in part by Maggie Haberman, a very familiar name. Part 1B, it uses an anonymous source, as these things often do. Now, the source had not seen the transcript, and according to KT McFarlane, who is about to release her own book, they still haven't seen the transcript either. Now, an electronic version of the book, only electronic, must be submitted to the NSC and the White House Office of Legal Counsel. But the article references a hard copy. For the book to be published and to be approved, which may be altered, a version of the manuscript is offered and must be by both. All the talking heads start their respective discussion, but nobody has yet seen the book or even approved the manuscript. And since then, it sounds like the White House has flat out said that they're not going to approve it. Now, Mick Mulvaney, the DOJ, and others deny the purported statements in the manuscript, which would be those published by New York Times, and those are the ones that nobody has even seen. Now, POTUS tweets, tweets denying and lightly, by Trump standards, Bolton and the book. Democrats jump all over it, and there's this theory that Pelosi held up the articles due to having knowledge of that transcript's content. The dates do line up, so the story is plausible. Now, the thing that's interesting, I said yesterday we're watching a movie, and it's very possible that Bolton is our guy and he's playing them with this fake manuscript, or maybe he faked out President Trump and he took advantage of him. Well, Tennessee says George Washington used the Culper spy ring during the Revolutionary War. The ring was established and led by Benjamin Talmadge, whose cover spy name was John Bolton. The spies found out about the Hessian encampment at Trenton, New Jersey, and George Washington crosses the Delaware on Christmas, 1776, year was in Durham boats, and wins his first decisive battle of the war, the Battle of Trenton. Very, very interesting stuff. So, is John Bolton a spy for President Trump? Did he set these people up with this fake manuscript and set the Democratic world on fire? Well, only time will tell, but I think I might be sold. I do think that Bolton might actually be working for President Trump at this point, because as Tennessee said yesterday, either you trust the president and you trust the plan, or you trust that Bolton was smart enough to outsmart the smartest man in America. All right, so next, in a tweet sent over by my good friend and fellow researcher Methods from Undercover Huber, it says ex-special counsel prosecutor in the Flynn case is now in a major climb down and agrees that General Flynn should not go to jail and get probation instead. Sounds like they want this case to be over and are giving the judge and Flynn an off-ramp on the same day that Flynn says he's innocent. Very interesting development because, as you know, just recently they started to try to go even harder against General Flynn. And I think at that time they were doing the same thing. They were just trying to make the case go away, trying to scare him into going and saying that he's guilty. Well, he's clearly not willing to do that. He is an innocent man. So let's take a look at some reporting on this very issue. All right, so now that Michael Flynn has moved to formally withdraw his guilty plea, saying that federal prosecutors breached their deal with him, we have some insight directly from Sidney Powell. Now, the Department of Justice backed down from seeking jail time yesterday and made clear that prosecutors would accept mere probation in the case of former Trump National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. It's a shift that comes as Flynn moves to withdraw his guilty plea, leveraging accusations of government misconduct. Now, just weeks ago, the DOJ said it would seek up to 6 months of prison time for the retired Army Lieutenant General who spent just 24 days at his post in the new administration. Represented by an aggressive new attorney, that would be Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn days later had moved to withdraw his guilty plea for making false statements to the FBI in 2017. Statements that eventually wrapped him up in former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. In truth, I never lied, Flynn wrote in a new supplemental motion to withdraw his guilty plea filed just yesterday. My guilty plea has rankled me throughout this process, and while I allowed myself to succumb to the threats from the government to save my family, I believe I was grossly misled about what really happened. Michael Flynn also blamed his former lawyers for providing him with bad information that led to that guilty plea. One of the ways a person becomes a 3-star general is by being a good soldier, taking orders, being part of a team, and trusting the people who provide information and support, Flynn wrote. Lori and I trusted Mr. Kellner and Mr. Anthony to guide us through the most stressful experience in our lives. In a completely incomprehensible situation, I have never felt more powerless. While the DOJ stance is technically the same, it's seeking a sentence of 0 to 6 months, the department's new filing makes it clear that it would not oppose a sentence imposing 0 jail time at all if that's what the judge decides. And in support of a potential sentence of probation, the government notes 2 similarly situated high-ranking officials who committed similar crimes and got probation. That would be former National Security Advisor Sandy Berger, who stole classified information then lied about it to investigators, and General David Petraeus, who is convicted of possessing classified documents he should not have had, and both were only sentenced to probation. It's not clear why the Justice Department appeared to soften its position, though prosecutors did suggest Flynn deserves credit for his decades-long military service. They also say there is no dispute that the defendant has an unusually strong record of public service. Now, we know that prosecutors were initially in favor of probation due to Flynn's high level of cooperation with the government, but Flynn replaced his lawyers with this new one, and they've taken a far more adversarial approach in the case, including in their declaration and supplemental motion Wednesday as he sought to withdraw this guilty plea. Now, in a sweeping argument that took aim at the Bureau's outrageous conduct, Flynn's legal team highlighted a slew of information that has come to light since Flynn's plea, including that no precise record of Flynn's statements to the agents exist and that the original handwritten FD 302 witness reports from the interview are missing, with subsequent versions later edited in some undisclosed manner by anti-Trump FBI officials. Now, never forget that Flynn's team maintained he had no reason to lie about his communications with the Russian ambassador concerning how the country should respond to sanctions imposed by the former administration or a then-pending vote on Israel in the United Nations, the conversations that put him on the FBI's radar and he later pled guilty for lying about. After all, Flynn said he knew federal officials routinely monitor, record, and transcribe conversations like the ones he had with the Russian diplomats. And the DOJ made clear on Wednesday that it was opposed to granting Flynn a sentence lighter than probation. They continue, defendant Flynn has affirmed his guilt of this crime on multiple occasions before multiple district judges, and he does not directly contest it in his supplemental sentencing memorandum. Accordingly, the relevant facts are before the court to impose an appropriate sentence for the offense of conviction. The Justice Department says that while Flynn did provide assistance to their investigation and that a judge may consider that in fashioning a sentence, any claims of acceptance of responsibility are hard to reconcile with his request to withdraw his guilty plea. Sentencing is set for February 27th. Now, I think this all goes back to the idea that Flynn knew exactly what he was doing. He knew they were going to be listening. And when they did, he probably figured that they were going to try to railroad him. I would even imagine that the White Hats were aware of the conversations that Andrew McCabe and others had prior to all of this taking place, that they wanted to first get Flynn and then get President Trump. So I think Flynn threw himself on the sword. He allowed for this to happen because he knew exactly what direction it would go, that in the end, it would reveal the incredible corruption in our own government. And then you throw in the fact that they forced him to plead guilty by threatening to go after his son. Absolutely reprehensible conduct on behalf of the DOJ, and I think that anyone in the FBI or the DOJ that even remotely touched this case should be completely removed from any source of responsibility for any cases or any investigations in the future. It is completely unforgivable. Now, some excellent news coming out of Ukraine. It looks like the ex-prosecutor who was originally leading the Burisma investigation is demanding a criminal probe of none other than Uncle Joe right here. Former Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin has filed a criminal complaint with the state authorities, claiming that former U.S. President Uncle Joe strong-armed Kiev into firing him in order to stop the Burisma investigation. Now, this complaint has been sent to the Ukraine's State Bureau of Investigations, and in that complaint, he requests that Biden be charged with interference with the activities of a law enforcement officer. Now, I want to say that this is particularly interesting considering the fact that the United States and the Ukraine have that treaty which says that they must help each other with activities such as this, with law enforcement actions. Now, Shokin urged the SBI to kickstart a pretrial investigation into the alleged crime committed by Uncle Joe, who he claims was illegally pressuring Ukrainian officials into ousting him from office while using that $1 billion loan guarantee as leverage. Now, noting that Biden, in his official capacity as the second in command in the U.S. political hierarchy, repeatedly visited Ukraine in late 2015 and early 2016 to persuade high-ranking officials to remove him, Shokin argued that as a result, he curtailed an objective investigation into criminal proceedings of the facts of unlawful activities of persons associated with the company Burisma Holdings Limited, including the son of the specified high-ranking official. That would be Hunter. Shokin specifically references the recently released documentary series Ukraine Gate: Inconvenient Facts by French investigative journalist Olivier Barrier, which challenges the Western media claims that the corruption investigation into Burisma was dormant at the time that Biden got Shokin fired. Barrier, founder of the popular anti-corruption blog La Crisis, said he collected documents that showed that the investigation into the gas company was in full swing at the time. Now, meanwhile, while all this is going on, U.S. President Donald Trump is currently in the midst of this impeachment trial for something about abuse of power, which is merely just a projection of the crimes committed by the former presidential administration and none other than Uncle Joe. Just as a quick reminder, let's go ahead and take a look at that video of Joe Biden bragging about the fact that he got Viktor Shokin fired.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Now, I want to draw your attention to this man right here. He's an advisor to Joe Biden, and his name is Michael Carpenter. Now, his name just came up in a couple of posts from our favorite Anon and in some tweets from Paul Sperry. Unfortunately, they also highlight the name and image of a person who we are not allowed to show here on this program. So in the pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to that. But as far back as 2015, it looks like this man, Michael Carpenter, the advisor to Joe Biden, was working with that person whose name we are unable to talk about on this platform. And perhaps they could have been working hand in hand well before the impeachment began to actually plan it and get it taken care of. Now, we've been told that this is the source one. The other person we can't say is source two from the National Security Council because that is where they were working. Now, again, Michael Carpenter, a name worth remembering, and please do check out those tweets from Paul Sperry. Now, our next tweet is coming from Carly P, and that is in this post right here, and it says, impeachment end. Attempts to send new articles to the Senate to delay. State of the Union. Boomerang. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Let's take a look at what Carly had to show us. She says, this is quite a bombshell right before the Iowa caucuses. Sorry, hashtag creepy quid pro Joe. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what Lindsay said.
And experience with the president discussing what he describes in effect as a quid pro quo. Yeah. Why not hear from John Bolton to describe that?
I can assume the following, that the president suspended the aid for a period of time to make sure the Bidens were looked at by the Ukraine, and that the Ukrainians would look at allegations of election interference in 2016. What has been clear to me in this trial, that there's every reason in the world to want to look at Hunter Biden's conduct, that the public purpose that we're talking about is that when Joe Biden, my friend, got up in front of the Ukrainian parliament and said, the time for sweetheart deals is over in the energy sector, his son receiving $3 million from Burisma undercut that message, and that will be pursued outside of impeachment. That, to me, is a legitimate point of inquiry, even if you assume the facts most favorable to the government. And this is not a crime. This is a partisan impeachment. And I'm hoping a few Democrats will say, I don't like President Trump, I don't agree with his policies, but we should never do this again, because the House in Republican hands, trust me, could do the same thing. And I may find myself in a position of where a partisan impeachment comes to the Senate involving a Democrat, and I hope I would rise to the occasion.
Sir, on what do you base your increasing optimism that you'll block witnesses?
Everybody believes that there's a scintilla of evidence that the Bidens were involved in business practices that undercut U.S. foreign policy interests in the Ukraine. The manager said, this is a hoax, it's been debunked, it hasn't. If there's not a scintilla of evidence, I would argue if you can find a scintilla of evidence, then it makes the president's concerns reasonable, non-personal, and all you need to do is show a public motive, not an exclusively, solely personal motive. I buy what Dershowitz is saying.
Have you heard there are fewer than 4 votes for Republican votes?
I think Mr. Dershowitz has convinced people. You can assume the facts, as you said, most favorable to the government, and still find that the evidence would suggest there's a scintilla of reason.
All right, so a lot there to unpack from Lindsey Graham. He just said that everybody believes that there is a scintilla of evidence that the Bidens acted against the best interests of the United States. They clearly were acting in their own self-interest, not for the interests of the United States and our taxpayers. So that is great. Also, saying that outside of the issue of impeachment, that's where they want to take this up. And that's what I've been saying. We don't need the evidence to be presented here during the impeachment trial, but we just need for the idea of that evidence to be put into the record so that everybody can realize that we need an investigation separate from this impeachment trial, because it is a completely and totally separate question. Did the Bidens engage in corruption? Yes. Now, we need an investigation that is solely based upon that idea, because the evidence is there. The president has done nothing wrong. All he wanted was for a legitimate look into the election interference in the 2016 election, because Ukraine had a significant part to play in that. And the Bidens had their own part to play in the corruption that was going on there at Burisma. All of this will be brought to bear. We just need to get through this impeachment trial. And it looks like now perhaps McConnell does have the votes to ensure that no witnesses are going to be brought to the floor. The president will be acquitted. It will be a full exoneration, and this will be shown to be a purely partisan action. There is no criminal activity here on behalf of the president. Now, a lot of people often ask, why does Adam Schiff lie with such impunity? Well, here is a hot mic that was caught at a presser this morning, and it shows some, or rather, you hear the audio of a couple of reporters discussing Schiff's statement about contact or lack of contact with the whistleblower. And the person says he's protected by, there's a speech and debate clause for members of Congress, so they can say anything they want with immunity. That means that he can lie without having to worry about getting any type of repercussions. So that's why we see Adam Schiff out there saying things all the time that aren't true, including the time that he made up that transcript conversation with President Trump and President Zelensky. Now, the audio on this is very low. I don't know if I'm going to be able to turn it up enough so that we can hear it, but we're going to give it a shot and we'll see how it sounds.
So they can say anything. Has he had interface with whistleblower? He said he doesn't know. Staff hasn't had a conversation. And he's protected by there's a speech and debate clause for members of Congress, so they can say anything they want with immunity.
So nice catch, Mr. Jones, at Mr. Jones _TM. Very, very nice catch. Clearly, we are not the only ones paying attention. Looks like those covering the politicians in Washington know exactly how things work. So don't let anything Adam Schiff says sway you, because we know that when he's speaking on the floor of Congress, it's all a lie. All right, guys, and finally, in a tweet from my friend Blue Sky at QBlueSkyQ on Twitter, it looks like John Brennan is asking for the State of the Union to be canceled. She says, hashtag panic in D.C., they are very afraid, hashtag boomerang, hashtag Thursday thoughts. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Mr. Brennan and his thoughts on the subject.
Things that I really worry about is that we're going to have the State of the Union very shortly, while all this is going on, and you know, putting us forward, you know,
State of our union strong?
Well,
who the hell is going to say that?
I just cannot imagine. It's not just embarrassing, but also I think it's very destructive to the image of the United States worldwide to have this going on and have Mr. Trump up there. And you can imagine he's going to use that State of the Union address not to address the State of the Union, but to address the state of Donald Trump. And he is going to, I think, be on the offensive there. So I would question whether or not it makes sense to hold that at this point.
That's interesting. Donna, do you think there's any way that Speaker Pelosi would rescind that invitation? Because I get that would be a fear of some. Do you want to see the House chamber used that way?
Well, of course, John Brennan is not interested in having Donald Trump have the State of a Union because the state of this union has never been stronger. The only thing that is holding us back from doing any better is this partisan politics that the Democrats and people like John Brennan are playing in Washington, D.C. They cannot stand to see President Trump and the United States succeed. Their actions up until this point have been fruitless and futile. They have been unable to derail the plans of this president and the best interests of this country, no matter how hard they try. I think Brennan is afraid of what President Trump is going to reveal at the State of the Union. I do believe that President Trump will use this as an opportunity because he will be addressing the entirety of the American public. And the way things have been going for the Dems, it is not going to look good for them when the president takes that national stage. Well, guys, that's all that I have for you today. I hope that when you see this report, it excites you just as much as it excites me to create them. Don't forget about the contest. Like, share, comment, and subscribe so that you can have a chance to win one of 2 $100 gift cards coming up at the 200,000 subscriber mark. And we will continue to do contests from there on out. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, it's Red Pill. Just one more thing. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to support this channel. If you'd like to see some ways that you can support the channel, you can always check the show notes in the pinned comment of this video below. Whether you like, whether you share, whether you make sure that your notifications are on, any way that you support this channel means so much to me. I could not be doing this without you, and I could not do it without your help. Without people like you, this channel would not exist, so thank you so much to everyone for all of their many means of support. Don't forget to check out the merchandise store that is also in the pinned comment, and I will see you guys next time.